Folks, the effort to suppress votes is alive and well in the Trump administration. And Jefferson, Beauregard, Himmler, Sessions is doing nothing in order to help protect people's right to vote. As a matter of fact, he's pretty much doing everything he can to hinder people's right to vote. Now, I'm going to play the entire clip from the Roland Martin show this morning because it gives a lot of good information. And just to let you know, I did shoot out a tweet to Christian Clark asking for a list of the 248 jurisdictions that this voter suppression group has targeted, trying to get them to purge the voter rolls of people of color, young people, and elderly people. Let me play the clip and then I'll come back at the end.
Public election officials across the country have received letters from the Public Interest Legal Foundation, a right-wing conservative group headed by a member of Trump's Election Integrity Commission, which is really a fraud commission, telling them to prune their voter rolls of voters who have died, moved, or lost their eligibility or face a federal lawsuit. Of course, this has been happening all across the South. In fact, this particular group has been targeting small locales in Mississippi doing just that. Is this about voter suppression or voter integrity? Well, the Brennan Center and Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law have joined forces to fight this group. Here to discuss that is Christian Clark, President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Now, Christian, I read a previous story with this group. They were targeting these small places who could not afford to fight them in court. Right. So they went ahead and did exactly as they prescribed. Is this what they're doing? Are they specifically targeting places they know can't afford to fight back?
Well, now they've taken this campaign to a new level. They've targeted 248 jurisdictions, some big, some small, some in urban areas, some in rural areas, many with large numbers of minority voters, African Americans, Latinos, poor people. And what they've done with the 248 jurisdictions across the country that they've targeted is they've sent these letters that are designed to bully them into instituting voter purge efforts. They've sent letters suggesting to them that we know, and the data shows, that you have ineligible people on your voter registration rolls, and unless you do something now, we're letting you know that we're going to sue you. We think this is a travesty. And so what we've done is we've taken action. We've reached out to every single one of those jurisdictions and said a few things. One, do not be bullied into instituting a voter purge program, because that may violate federal law, a law known as the National Voter Registration Act. Two, we said we want information showing all of your correspondence with this dangerous public interest legal foundation group. And we want you to show records and provide records to us to help us confirm that you haven't purged anyone from the rolls. And then three, we've said, here's what the law actually says. And if you need legal support or counsel fighting back, we're here to support you. In California, Secretary of State Alex Padilla has already pushed back and said, look, this group is using bad data and flawed methodology. So we know that there are many jurisdictions who are getting these letters who are in a state of paralysis, and so we're providing legal support to them to help them fight back.
Folks who don't know exactly what is this group, they're based out of Virginia, correct?
Yes, they're a Washington-based group. They may also be based in Virginia, but they're led most importantly by Christian Adams, who is one of the commissioners on the president's so-called Election Integrity Commission. Christian Adams is somebody who's devoted his professional career to promoting voter suppression efforts across the country. So here he is working alongside Chris Kobach on the president's sham voting commission, and in the same breath leading the work of this foundation that has now launched this unprecedented national campaign that is designed to bully election officials into instituting voter purge programs in their communities.
Should I go to my iPad? This is a photo of Christian Adams. I just wanted folks to know. And so what this guy's doing, along with others, again, they are specifically trying to black folks from the voting rolls because they want to set this thing up to do exactly what took place in 2016. Nearly 200,000 people were affected by voter suppression in Wisconsin. Trump barely wins Wisconsin. So the exact same thing happened in Pennsylvania with their voter ID there as well. I mean, I keep saying that this is really official Republican Party policy across the country, how they are trying to suppress the voting rights, not just of African Americans and Latinos, but also young people and elderly people and the poor.
Right. That's right. This is part of a coordinated campaign that we're seeing across the country to make it harder for people to vote and participate. What we've seen under this administration is Jeff Sessions has brought federal voting rights enforcement to a grinding halt. We've seen Trump launch this sham voting commission, and now we're seeing folks like Christian Adams who are promoting these efforts across the country to bully election officials into purging people from the voter rolls. People need to pay attention and definitely stay vigilant and speak up. One of the things that we're doing at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law is fighting to make sure that everyone is able to vote, and we want people to report problems to 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Voter purge programs are part of a long and old dirty tactic that we've seen to purge and hurt the rights of African Americans, Latinos, students, and the elderly. If people get evidence or signs that election officials are purging people from the rolls in their community, we need them to speak up so that we can be vigilant and on top of it and fight back.
Jay.
What can everyday folk do on a daily basis? I mean, it's a war. It's a full-on fight. I don't believe in voter suppression. I think,
A full-on fight that this illegal group, this right-wing group, is funded by billionaire conservatives. And again, this is a coordinated effort. I mean, they, on their side, they've got billionaires who are funding this.
So we need billionaires to step up.
No. I'm not saying. I need the people at home to understand that these groups, for instance, there was a group that supported Neil Gorsuch in the Supreme Court. One donor, who we have no idea who it was, gave $25 million to run ads to specifically get Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. $25 million. And so that's what you have here. Robert Mercer, billionaire, him and his daughter, they've been funding Breitbart and Milo and Steve Bannon. And so what I'm saying is, for those people who are supportive of civil rights, understand that when you talk about a war, these are folks who are funding a war.
That's right.
And they are serious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, one, I want to ask how much of an integral part is the purging process inside of having an effective registration base in these municipalities, but even places like Philadelphia where you have 16-17% voter turnout, is this an opportunity for us to educate voters and really, as they're trying to purge, we should be adding on voters into registration?
Absolutely. In fact, officials bear responsibility for making sure that they're reaching out to not yet registered people in their communities and that they're adding them onto the rolls. It's not just the public who bears that responsibility. So to come back to your question about what ordinary folks can do, pick up the phone and call your local election official and say, what are you doing to raise the rate of voter participation and turnouts here in our community? And are you taking efforts unnecessarily to purge people from the rolls? Are you turning data over to this dangerous sham voting commission that the president has launched? We need to push officials, and hold them to a higher standard of accountability. And if we do that, we should be pushing them to raise voter turnout rates in communities all across the country.
I mean, are you able, though, to replace, do you know the number of purges versus the number of re-registrations?
We don't know, but again, they sent this letter to 248 jurisdictions, and the end goal is to bully them into putting in place voter purge programs. Every election official has a responsibility to clean their rolls and to make sure that their rolls are updated. But what this foundation has done is they've used bad data and flawed methodology to say that we know you have ineligible people on the rolls in their community, and there is a federal law, the National Voter Registration Act, that prohibits precisely what this foundation seeks to do, which is to push officials unnecessarily to strip, to purge legitimately registered voters off the rolls in their community.
And just for folks to remember, also the Supreme Court will be hearing a case where in Ohio, if you miss one election, you're automatically removed from the voting rolls.
Right.
Again, that's how, which is one of the reasons why I've been trying to get the ACO unions, other folks, to help State Representative Alicia Reese out with her Ohio Voter Bill of Rights that would put the right to vote in the state constitution.
Right.
That would protect from this kind of stuff. And I just need people to understand that that the efforts that we see at play here are extremely deliberate. And they literally are sitting in meetings, they are strategizing, trying to figure out how to slash 5, 10, 20, 30, 50,000 here, here, and here in order to win elections.
That's right. This Supreme Court case is incredibly important. Ohio has put in place another voter purge program, this kind of use it or lose it. I mean, you know, the right to vote is sacred. And when people overcome the hurdles that sometimes stand in the way of getting onto the registration rolls, we need to be doing everything in our power to make sure that people are able to hold on to that power and have the ability to exercise that right to vote when they're ready and prepared to. But Roland, you're exactly right. This is part of a dangerous, coordinated campaign that we're seeing across our country. I think that we had a moment of excitement in the air earlier this month. You know, a lot of people turned out for local and state contests happening in their community this November. We need to make sure that people stay vigilant, stay woke. The battle is not over. They are working hard to strip us off the rolls, and we have to fight back.
All right, Kristen, we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, so just so that you know, and I direct you to the publicinterestlegal.org, which is the Public Interest Legal Foundation's website. And they are specifically going after Christian Clark, her being part of the Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, along with the Brennan Center and Demos. And I'm just going to read you the information off of their site. The November 22nd, the Public Interest Legal Foundation today commented on a partisan collective's promise to thwart ongoing probes into bloated voter rolls in 24 states. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, Brennan Center, and Demos announced an effort to offer guidance to jurisdictions contacted by the PILF, which is the Public Interest Legal Foundation, earlier this year after a uniform review found bloated voter rolls in 248 counties across the states. Now, the information that they're using is so far out of date, it's like criminal that they even reference the information that they're basing their statements on. Groups like the aforementioned regularly inject themselves into conversations regarding voter roll maintenance to minimize the importance of federal standards on the matter. Worse, they erroneously accuse election integrity groups of working to trigger mass removals when no such mechanism exists. That's bullshit, because they did it in Wisconsin, as Roland Martin pointed out, and they also did it in Texas. And the number of people that they kicked off the rolls in Texas, and I'm talking about people of color primarily, was 600,000. They were taken to court over it, and the state of Texas lost. Meanwhile, those 600,000 people will never be able to recover what they lost, which was the right to cast a ballot in a national election. So for them to say that no harm, no foul, nah, that in my mind, and it should also be in your mind, that just does not work. Now, I had mentioned that they had placed Christian Clark, the lady that you see here, basically on a hit list. I'm going to read a portion of what they say specifically about her. Lawyers Committee President Kristen Clark presents a number of concerning characteristics in her views on voting rights. Clark worked to exclude racial cohorts from full protection of the Voting Rights Act, whatever that means. Clark worked against bringing the Department of Justice case against Ike Brown, a Mississippi political operative found liable for voter discrimination against white voters in Mississippi, really. Clark agitated against the inclusion of seasoned federal prosecutors to serve as DOJ poll monitors where manpower was short. Yeah, and I wonder where those seasoned federal prosecutors were based out of. PILF initiated voter roll probes in 24 states in September of 2017 after reviewing 2016 voting and census records. Well, those records, obviously the census records were from 2010. So right off the bat, you know there's a problem there. A total of 248 counties and additional municipalities received voter data request letters. PILF has successfully litigated to institute voter roll cleanup efforts and preserve record transparency in North Carolina, Virginia, and Mississippi. Voter list maintenance cases continue in Indiana and Texas, while they've lost in Texas like 5 times already, and I believe they've also lost at least once in Indiana. A first of its kind trial completed over the summer of 2017 in Broward County, Florida, they claim was successful. Now, I'm just going to tell you folks, the letter which I just downloaded is on the Public Interest Legal Foundation's letterhead sent to whomever, and the draft of the letter states as follows. I am writing on behalf of the Public Interest Legal Foundation to notify you that based on our research, your jurisdiction is in apparent violation of Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act, and to request disclosure and inspection of voter list maintenance records pursuant to the public inspection provision of the NVRA. The requested records are detailed below. The Public Interest Legal Foundation is a nonpartisan, nonprofit public interest law firm that specializes in legal and public policy matters affecting elections, voting, and other political processes of the nation, and providing the public with information regarding efforts to damage the integrity of American elections. Voter rolls across America contain substantial numbers of ineligible or inaccurate registrations, resulting in a possible disenfranchisement of legally eligible voters through ballot dilution, and threatens to taint the integrity of the electoral process. Federal law requires election officials to conduct a reasonable effort to maintain voter registration lists free of dead voters, ineligible voters, and voters who have moved away. Based on our comparison of publicly available information published in the U.S. Census Bureau and the Federal Election Assistance Commission, it appears that your jurisdiction is failing to comply with these federal law requirements. See, and that section right there is a bunch of bullshit because they don't have access to the data, so they just basically have targeted these 248 municipalities and shot this bullshit letter out there. In short, your county has significantly more voters on the registration rolls than it has eligible living citizen voters. And there's no way for them to know that. This letter serves as a statutory notice to your jurisdiction required by 52 U.S.C. and 20510B prior to the commencement of any lawsuit in order to enforce provisions of Section 8 of the NVRA, 52 U.S.C. and 20507 for failure to conduct adequate list maintenance. We welcome a discussion that could result in concrete remedial measures to address this circumstance. See, this is somebody just throwing out 248 lines and hoping that some fish snap on the bait. But this letter basically really has no foundation in law except to threaten a lawsuit which these smaller municipalities basically don't have the money to fight, while as the larger municipalities, and specifically as referenced in California, have pushed back on this bullshit. Now, this guy, which you saw his name and his picture earlier, along with Chris Kobach, who is a total asshole, and he's the Secretary of State of, I believe it's Indiana. It's Kansas. It's Kansas. This guy was trying to obtain or force documentation from all 50 states so that bullshit commission that Trump set up sent out letters to all 50. And funny thing about it, turned down the request from his own commission to provide information. So, folks, this is just another blatant attack to try to knock off, 5%, 10% of truly eligible voters, so that people like Trump and his ilk, and I'm talking about Roy Moore as well, especially down in Alabama and Mississippi, can knock whatever the black vote is, or the vote of elderly or poor people of color, period, knock their votes down so that they can intensify or increase the potency of the white vote for their Republicans of choice. We cannot let this stand. We cannot let this stand. So again, I'm going to try to see if I can locate the list of the 248 municipalities that these letters went out to, and try to provide that information out to any of my subscribers, who in turn can then share the information.